Hello everyone, this is Dr. E, and for today we're going to be talking about how we learn or teach trig equation. So this is one of the topics in trigonometry that most students are having trouble with, and I'm going to share with you how I teach this to my students who are taking trigonometry for the first time. So solving trig equations, one of the most exciting topics in trigonometry that I love to teach. And for today, I'm going to share with you how I connect my algebra lesson to this particular lesson in trigonometry so that I'll be able to help my students to alleviate their math anxiety when it comes to trigonometry, because we know that most students are a little bit intimidated when they are working with math problems involving letters, more so when we introduce trig function in the mix. So this is what we're going to be talking about for today. So if you're a student or a teacher, this tips or this process that I'm doing every time I start my trig class would probably benefit you. So hopefully you'll be able to pick up some techniques that I always use to my students so that they'll be able to answer problems involving trig equations. So the first thing that I do is to review them and refresh their memories on how to solve basic trig equations in algebra. So I always give them problem sets on how to solve linear equation, quadratic equations, radical equations, and sometimes even reviewing them on how to simplify rational expressions. And all these lessons that I am sharing with you will be on the description box down below so that you will have an idea on how I give some examples to my students on how to refresh their memories on solving algebraic equations like this. And after having my students practice on some problems involving basic algebraic equations, because we're talking about solving trig equations, we need to also make sure that our students are understanding and mastering how to use the unit circle in finding special angles like this that you are seeing in our screen right now. So when I introduce the unit circle, I always share with them how I connect it to geometry, the special angles, the 45, 45, 90 degree angle, and the 30, 60, 90 angles, and how it relates to the unit circle that we are going to be using or we often use in trigonometry. And once they know how to use their unit circle and finding, let's say, sine 30 degrees or cosine 90 degrees. Once they have mastered that skill, then I will introduce to them how they will combine those two skills, solving equation and then the unit circle, in solving algebraic equation like this that I am going to share with you. So we have sine x plus square root of 2 equals to negative sine x, and this is an example of a trig function that my students can see for the first time when I introduce this particular topic. And as I've mentioned, I always connect it to algebra. So before solving this, I always convert it and show it to an equation that is more familiar to them, which is algebraic equation. So instead of solving this in the get-go, I will convert this sine x right here into just an x so that instead of seeing a trig equation, my students can see x plus square root of 2 equals negative x instead. And this will make it a little bit less intimidating for students to answer. So we know that when we solve for x for this particular algebraic equation, we can start with adding x on both sides. So this cancels out and we have 2x plus square root of 2 is equal to 0. And then we subtract square root of 2 on both sides. So that we'll have 2x is equal to negative square root of 2. And then by dividing both sides by 2, x is equal to negative square root of 2 all over 2. And this is how we solve algebraic equation in algebra. And all our students will be able to understand these steps because this procedures is something that they are more familiar with. And then we're going to translate it to trigonometry, which Basically, the process or thought process we did in algebra will be the same process that we're going to be using in solving this problem. So, just like what we did here, if we are going to solve for x, we're going to solve sine x this time. So we'll add sine x on both sides. And you'll have 2 sine x plus square root of 2 is equal to 0. And then we're going to subtract 2 on both sides. And we'll have 2 sine x equals negative square root of 2. And then we divide both sides by 2. So that we'll have sine x by itself, which is equal to negative square root of 2 all over 2. And we know that when we are working with trig function, the process will not stop here because we have another step that we need to do, and that is to find the value of x using the unit circle. And in this case, we're just going to ask our students to use the unit circle in reverse. And in this time, we're going to figure out when the x value will give a square root of 2 all over 2 in terms of the sine function. So that's when the unit circle is going to be used. You can use your circular unit circle, or sometimes I give my students a little note card where it has the little values of the unit circle so that they'll be able to find it right away. And we all know that finding the values of x using the unit circle, sine x equals negative square root of 2 all over 2 is true at our angles at 5 pi all over 4 and at 7 pi all over 4. So we have 2 values, and our students will understand that because our trig function is periodic, and we're just going to supply them with the values of x in the periods of 0 and 360 degrees. And this is how I share or I teach my students how to solve an equation or a function of, or a trig function by connecting algebra and trigonometry in my lesson. So this is the unit circle, 2 lessons that you need to share with them before you give them all the complex trig equations that you could give. So first, refresh their memories on solving basic algebra equation, and then next, mastery on how to use the unit circle and finding the values of the coordinates in the unit circle. And after that, you are ready to go, and your students will be less afraid when they work with trig problems similar to this one. And again, if you have your lessons, share it down below how you teach solving trig equation to your students, and we'll be able to learn from you as well. And for those students who are looking for the videos on this particular topic, it's in the description box down below, so you can watch the videos and practice so that you'll be able to gain confidence on how to solve trig equation through my videos. And again, in working with complex math problems, we always just need to find ways on how to connect our prior knowledge, especially our algebra skills, because answering problems on trigonometry, calculus, geometry, or any of those math classes that gives us nightmare, mastery of our fundamentals, especially our basic algebra skills, would be your best answer if you're asking how you want to be good in math, just like some of your classmates in your class. So again, this is Dr. E, and see you again next time. Bye!